I thought we'd make some chocolate chip cookies this afternoon. So I've got my ingredients here. We're going to start with 110 grams of butter, which I've had out of the fridge for an hour or so and it's nice and soft. And the sugar, 200 grams of soft brown sugar or whatever sugar you've got. I've got some slightly darker muscovado sugar. I'm going to use my stand mixer today. If you haven't got a stand mixer, don't worry, you can just use an electric whisk or even a bowl and a wooden spoon and some elbow grease. So we're just going to pop the sugar and the butter into the stand mixer. Nice soft butter, in it goes. And we're going to whisk these together for about 5 minutes until the butter becomes much paler and soft and fluffy. Just start on a slowish speed, just until the ingredients get incorporated, and then we'll turn it up to a medium and leave it running. So that's been going for about 5 minutes and the butter and the sugar are well creamed together. So we're going to move on to the next part. At this point it's probably best to set the oven, 175 degrees Celsius in your oven, and it can preheat for the next 5 or 10 minutes while we just finish off the cookie dough. So I'm just going to take the bowl out of the stand mixer, give it a bit of a scrape down. I'm going to use the paddle again, so I'll just leave it connected and take it out. And you can see that the mixture is quite white now compared with the yellow butter that went in before. So I'm going to add the rest of the ingredients in. I'm just going to scrape down a little bit because the ingredients tend to get spread around the inside of the bowl. And we're going to add everything else. So the recipe calls for a few drops of vanilla extract and an egg. I'm also going to add some orange zest because I had some orange at lunchtime and I fancy chocolate orange flavour today, so that was the zest of one orange. I just zested the orange before I ate it. I've got my dry ingredients in here, so I've got 165 grams of plain flour, 30 grams of cocoa powder, and that's cocoa powder rather than drinking chocolate, which is mixed with milk and sugar. So this is pure cocoa powder, pinch of salt, and then a very carefully measured half teaspoon of baking powder and half teaspoon of baking soda. Now they are quite lumpy, so I am just going to sieve those ingredients before I put them back onto mix. Sifting them is quite a good idea, mixes them together, mixes the baking powder and the baking soda with everything else before they get combined together, and also takes the lumps out. Really very, very lumpy, so I'm just going to help it along a little bit. I've also got 100 grams of chocolate chips. So these are a double chocolate chip cookie. You can use dark chocolate like this, or you can use white chocolate. That makes a good contrast when they are out of the oven. So whatever suits you, in they go. You can put in about 100 grams like I am doing. You can even increase it right up to 200 grams. The recipe will take that much chocolate if you fancy being that indulgent. And then back into the stand mixer. Now I always say that once the flour's in a recipe, you should really try and avoid mixing things as much as you can. So we're just going to put this on for a minimal mix until it's well combined. The mixture is going to be very stiff, so we'll wait for that to happen and then we'll stop. Just slowly to start off with, otherwise you're going to get a cloud of flour. You can hear the mixture knocking a little bit, that's just the big lumps of chocolate in there. stand mixer really does take all the hard work out of this recipe. And there we have it. So just going to give that a little scrape down. We want to get as much into the oven as we can, so we'll give that a little scrape, and you can see the way it's coming off the stand mixer that it really is quite dry and crumbly and quite stiff. Okay, so we'll just move the mixer out of the way. And you can see, if I slide into shot here, full-sized baking tray. You will need 2 baking trays if you don't have an oven my size, because these spread quite a lot. So I've got a big double-sized baking tray and I've lined it with paper. And I'm going to turn the mixture out onto the worktop. I'll just give the bowl a bit of a scrape down. And you should end up with a log of mixture, stiff, a tiny bit crumbly. Looks like this. So I'm just going to bring it together. I want to divide this into 12 equal pieces. Now you can do this with the weighing scales if you like, or you can just go by eye. I'm just going to go by eye. So I reckon the best thing to do is to try and divide the mixture into quarters first, and then each quarter into thirds. So I'm just going to do it by chopping it in half, and then each half into half. Some really massive bits of chocolate in here, which are going to be delicious. And then each of those quarters into thirds. Okay, so by the time you're done, you should have 12 pieces. And then you're just going to roll each of your 12 pieces into a ball. And as you put them onto the cookie tray, just flatten them down with your fingers slightly one way and slightly the other. And make sure you spread them out so that when they spread in the oven, they don't blend into each other. Just the last couple to put on, roll into a ball and flatten slightly on the tray. Okay, so there's your 12 chocolate chip cookies spread out onto the tray, and they go into a preheated oven for about 15 minutes, checking after 10. So there they are, absolute beauties, fresh out the oven. They do remain very soft while they're warm, so allow them to cool for a little while, and then we'll transfer them onto a cooling rack to cool completely and to dry out. So they've cooled a bit now, and we can transfer them onto the cooling rack. Wonderful. Enjoy.